Hello, it's Jen, and this is How to Crochet the Autumn Lace Placemat. This week we'll be making our placemat out of this color, and next week I'll come back and I'll show you how I crocheted this sweet little fall-themed napkin ring. Hi again, and welcome to Winrose Fiber Studio. If you like the look of this lacy place setting, I hope you'll join me today. We're going to be making 12 by 17 inch or about 30.5 by 43 centimeter placemats. I think I'm going to make a set of 4, and I'm going to make each placemat in its own unique fall color. But you only need 1 skein of Lion Brand 24/7 medium weight cotton per placemat. I'll also be using a 5mm crochet hook today. You'll need a yarn needle and a pair of scissors. I've got 2 stitch markers and a ruler handy. One other thing that you'll need is a set of blocking mats. Now there's just one here, but you're going to need enough to block a 12 by 17 inch placemat, and you'll also need some T-pins. I'm going to be working up today's placemat in the color Goldenrod, so let's grab those crochet hooks and dive in. Our project begins by working 45 foundation single crochet. Alternatively, you can chain 46 and then single crochet into the second chain from your hook and in each stitch across. So you should have 45 single crochets at the end of this foundation row. I do prefer to begin projects with the foundation single crochet. I like this because it means that this edge of your work will have the same amount of stretch to it and tension in it as the last edge of your work, or at least very close. I have made a tutorial for how to make a foundation single crochet, and I will link that for you in the description below. That being said, if you prefer to chain 46 and then single crochet in that second chain from the hook and each stitch across, sometimes it's helpful to work your beginning chain in the next hook size up, or just be careful to make that beginning chain nice and relaxed, and it'll work out just fine. As you can see, I've jumped ahead to the end of this foundation row, and I'm just working my very last foundation single crochet. Now, it's very important at the beginning of this project to go ahead and double check your stitch count. You should have a total of 45 either foundation single crochet or regular single crochet that you've worked into a beginning chain. There will be a fair amount of stretch if you've worked that foundation single crochet chain, and even if you haven't, your piece may very well measure just a little over 12 inches, and that is actually what I'm hoping for or looking for here. I found as I tested out this pattern, if I had a beginning foundation row that was exactly 12 inches, the work would pull in a fair amount on me as I was creating the lace. So you want this foundation row to be just a little longer than 12 inches, maybe right around 14. The cotton yarn has a lot of stretch. It's going to be very forgiving when we block it at the end, so it doesn't need to be exactly the same length as mine, but it's nice to have a little extra, a little more than 12 inches in your foundation row. It's time to begin crocheting the lace portion of our project, which begins with row 1. Row 1 begins with a stacked single crochet. Turn your work so that the working yarn is behind the fabric. Elongate the loop on your hook and then insert your hook into the very first stitch. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. This creates a stacked single crochet, which we'll go ahead and mark as the first stitch of our row. Now we begin our repeating pattern for this row, which starts with a chain 2, and then we double crochet 2 together, beginning in the same stitch. So yarn over, insert your hook into the same stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then you're going to yarn over and pull through 2, And then you're going to yarn over again, skip the next 3 stitches, and insert your hook into the next stitch. Yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 remaining loops on your hook. So that is a double crochet 2 together that began in the same stitch, skipped 3 stitches, and ended in the next stitch. Next, you'll chain 2 and then single crochet in that same stitch, and this will complete that repeating pattern, and then you're going to go back to the beginning of it again. So to go back to the beginning of that repeating pattern, we go back to chaining 2, then we're going to double crochet 2 together again. So yarn over into the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, then yarn over, skip 3 stitches, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and then yarn over, pull through 3. After you double crochet 2 together, you chain 2 and then single crochet in the same stitch. And then it's back to the beginning of that repeat. Chain 2, double crochet 2 together, beginning in the same stitch, skipping 3 stitches, and ending in the next stitch. Then you'll chain 2 and single crochet in the same stitch. We're going to be continuing this repeat all the way across. I hope that you're starting to get into the rhythm of this lace. We're essentially going to be working this sequence of stitches throughout this entire project. So as you go on, I think you'll get more and more into the flow, and you'll see that each one of these stitches gets worked into a total of 3 times. If at any point you're starting to feel a little bit lost, I did create a full tutorial just on this wide open lace stitch, and I will link that for you in the description below. So that's a tutorial that just takes you slowly through the process of creating this lace. For now, let's get back to row 1, back to the beginning of that repeat with the chain 2, double crochet 2 together, beginning in the same stitch, yarn over, skip the next 3 stitches, and finishing off this double crochet 2 together in the next stitch, yarn over, pull through 3, then chain 2, and single crochet in the same stitch. Let's go ahead and time travel to the end of this row and our last repeat. So we're going to chain 2, double crochet 2 together, beginning in the same stitch, skipping 3 stitches, and ending in the last stitch. And then we complete the repeating pattern by chaining 2 and working a single crochet in the same stitch. Okay, so let's have a look at row 1. You can see just by working this first row, we're much closer to 12 inches, which is the length we're going for. If it's still a little bit longer than 12 inches, fear not, because it's still going to come in a little bit more with the second row of lace. Also, if we take just a moment and examine the fabric, you'll notice that there are sort of 11 individual shapes here. I like to think of them as little mountains. Every time you work a double crochet 2 together, it forms a little bit of a peak, so you get these 11 shapes working their way across this row. And it's these mountain peaks, if you will, or the double crochet 2 together stitches that we'll be working into in subsequent rows. Let's carry on with row 2. Now row 2 starts with a stacked double crochet. Once again, we're turning our work so that the working yarn is behind the fabric, and then we're inserting our hook into that first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Then we're going to turn our work so that we're looking at the side edge of the piece and inserting our hook under these 2 threads. Yarn over, pull up a loop, and then we're going to leave those 2 loops on our hook. Then we can go back to the front of our fabric, skip the next chain 2 space, yarn over, and insert your hook into the next stitch. This will be the top of a double crochet 2 together from the previous row. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through 3. So this becomes the first double crochet 2 together of row 2. Now we can begin our repeating pattern. Our repeating pattern for row 2 is to chain 2, single crochet in the same stitch, chain 2, and then double crochet 2 together, beginning in the same stitch, skipping the next 2 chain 2 spaces, and ending in the next stitch. You're going to repeat this pattern all the way across. You're working the same stitches as you did in the previous row. The difference here is really the stitch placement. So let's look at this repeat again. You chain 2, and then you single crochet in the same stitch, chain 2, and then we're going to double crochet 2 together, beginning in the same stitch. Then we're going to skip the next 2 chain 2 spaces and end this double crochet 2 together in the next stitch. So let's look at that again. Chain 2, single crochet in the same stitch, chain 2, double crochet 2 together, yarn over, insert your hook in the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and then skip the next 2 chain 2 spaces, and then you're going to yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and then yarn over, pull through those last 3 loops on your hook. I'm going to keep on working until I get to the end of row 2, and we'll take a close look at where our stitch placement goes at the end of the row. So I'll meet you there. Here we are on the last repeat of row 2. So we're going to chain 2, single crochet in the same stitch, chain 2 again, and then we double crochet 2 together, beginning in the same stitch, and this time we're skipping over only 1 chain 2 space because that is all that is left. And then we finish off this double crochet 2 together in that marked stitch, which was the first stitch of the previous row. So that double crochet 2 together is the last stitch we work in row 2. One thing you might notice about this pattern is whatever stitch a row begins with is the same stitch it ends with. So row 2 begins and ends with a double crochet 2 together. Now remember, at the end of row 1, we looked at these shapes and counted 11 mountain peaks. At the end of this row, we still have 11, but you have half a peak at the beginning and half a peak at the end and 10 in the middle. Okay, I hope everyone is feeling great and ready for row 3. In row 3, we go back to beginning with a stacked single crochet. So we elongate that loop on our hook, turn our work so that the working yarn is behind the fabric, then insert your hook into the first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through 2. One note that I would like to add to beginning our rows with stacked stitches is that you really want these stitches to be nice and loose. You want a stacked single crochet to be the same height as a regular single crochet, and the same is true when you're making a stacked double crochet. Now we're ready to dive into that very familiar repeating pattern, chain 2 and then double crochet 2 together, beginning in the same stitch, skipping the next 2 chain 2 spaces, and then ending in the next stitch. We complete the repeating pattern by working a chain 2 and then single crochet in the same stitch. Let's look at that another time. You're going to chain 2, double crochet 2 together, beginning in the same stitch. Then yarn over, skip the next 2 chain 2 spaces, and complete this double crochet 2 together in the next stitch, chain 2, single crochet in the same stitch. I am hoping that you are becoming more and more comfortable crocheting this lace. Remember, I do have that full tutorial linked for you in the description below. I'm also always happy to answer any questions that you may have as you're working your way through this tutorial. Here we are at the end of row 3 and our last repeat. We chain 2. We work a double crochet, 2 together, beginning in the same stitch, skipping the next 2, chain 2 spaces, and ending in the next stitch. Now that stitch is the one that I forgot to mark, the first stitch of the last row, but it's right there for you. And then we're going to finish that repeat by chaining 2 and working a single crochet in the same stitch. Here is a look at our fabric at the end of row 3. We've got 11 peaks, once again working their way across the fabric, and it begins and ends with a single crochet. For rows 4 through 30 of our placemat, you're going to repeat rows 2 and 3 respectively. I've written out all of the directions here so you can just pause the video or take a screenshot and continue to work row 2, then 3, 2, then 3 until you have a total of 30 rows. I am actually going to pop back in at the end of row 30. The pattern works out such that row 30 is a repeat of row number 2, and I'm just working the very end of that row. Row number 2 begins with a double crochet 2 together, so it ends with a double crochet 2 together, beginning in the same stitch, skipping the last chain 2 space, and ending in the marked stitch or that first stitch from the previous row. Now we have a total of 30 rows and our foundation row. Let's go ahead and count these rows together. So I'm just going to stretch out the fabric and slide it back to the very beginning. And I'm just counting the lace rows to make sure that I have 30. You'll notice that 2 rows of lace come together to form the shape of almost like a fat letter X. So that's a visual you can lean on as you're distinguishing these rows and counting to make sure that you have a total of 30 lace rows. I just folded my placemat in half lengthwise so it would easily fit on screen and so we could take a couple of quick measurements. Don't be alarmed if your fabric isn't measuring at exactly 12 by 17. The blocking process is going to take care of that for us. There is plenty of yarn here. But we haven't quite finished yet. We have one more row to go. For row 31, we're going to start with a stacked half double crochet. This time you will yarn over before inserting your hook in that first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over and pull through all 3. Working across this last row, you're going to work a half double crochet into the chain 2 space, and then into the single crochet, into the next chain 2 space, and then into the next stitch, which is going to be the top of a double crochet 2 together. You're going to repeat this all the way across. So first you'll be half double crocheting into a chain 2 space, into the single crochet, and then into the next chain 2 space, and then into the next stitch. And then back to the beginning of that repeat. So we're just going to continue this all the way across. The reason we're using a half double crochet for this last row is because it is about the same height as our foundation single crochet row, or the same height even if you worked a chain first and then worked single crochets into that chain. So we want something a little bit taller here than just a single crochet. I'm going to keep right on going and I'll meet you at the end of this row. Here we are at the last repeat. We're working into the single crochet, and then the last chain 2 space, and then the very last half double crochet goes into the very last stitch. Nice and relaxed. Now we can go ahead and cut our working yarn. I'm going to feed this tail in through that last loop, and then it'll be time to weave in our beginning and ending tails. As far as which side you weave your tail ends on, I like to do it on the back side of row 31. I treat the odd numbered rows as the right side facing, but truly this is a very reversible piece, so it doesn't really matter which side you weave your loose ends on. I would just do it on the same side for both loose ends. You'll notice that I always make 3 passes with my needle as I'm sewing. I find that this gives you a very trustworthy, secure finish. When I first started making this lace, it became clear to me very early on that this is one of those stitches that just really benefits from being blocked. It is partly due to the nature of the lace, and in this case, it also has to do with the cotton yarn that we're using. I'm not certain that the blocking would be as necessary if you were working with a wool, but I chose cotton because we're making placemats for the dinner table, and it's a very practical fiber for a project like this one. The first step in blocking our placemats is to give them a nice long soak in a bowl of water. I am just using lukewarm tap water, and I'm making sure that the entire placemat is submerged. Let it soak for at least 20 minutes until all the fibers in the yarn have had a chance to really relax. After 20 to 30 minutes have gone by, you can wring out the placemat, really squeeze out the excess water, and then I actually use a beach towel and roll the placemat up in the beach towel and really squeeze out as much water as I possibly can. Now we can bring out our blocking mats and pin our placemat to size. My blocking mats might look a little confusing because it's made for blocking round shapes as well as square or rectangle ones, but each one of the blocks on the grid is 1 inch in length and width, and so I can use this to measure off 12 inches for the short sides and 17 inches for the long ones. I like to start by pinning the corners, and then I go around each edge. Don't be alarmed if you feel like you have a little excess fabric. That is actually preferable than to have to be kind of pulling on it and stretching it to size. I think you'll be amazed by how wonderfully this project blocks and how well it holds its shape, especially after letting it slowly air dry while being pinned in place. You can see that I'm already taking out the pins, and that is after allowing my placemat to dry overnight. Make sure you give your placemat plenty of time to become perfectly dry. Perhaps one of the most satisfying parts of this project is removing these T-pins and then sliding your placemat off of the blocking mats. Of course, because I am who I am, rather than savor this moment, I pull out my ruler and make sure that my placemat is blocked to size. Our placemat is complete. Next week, I'll be back with the napkin ring tutorial. I actually love the way it looks in the orange, but I had a great time making it in all 4 colors. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit like and subscribe so you don't miss that napkin ring tutorial or any of the future tutorials coming your way. I post on Tuesdays, and I'm really looking forward to sharing more of my ideas and designs with you. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you next time.